Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. As we covered in the previous episode, members of the dog subfamily Caninae began to diversify during the late Miocene circa 10 million years ago. At this point endemic to North America, the ancestors of the modern grey fox Urocyon, the so-called true foxes of Vulpini, and the wolf-like Canids had recently split from each other. While the foxes remained relatively small, non-cursorial and generalised, members of Canini would move in a different direction, becoming larger and better adapted for life on the open plains and savannas of the late Miocene. Today, Canini contains the highly diverse South American pseudocyanins, as well as the clade Canina, which encompasses the jackals, coyotes, dholes, African painted dogs, and a confusing variety of species that are referred to as wolves. The common ancestors of both of these groups originated in North America, probably about 10 million years ago, with the likely candidate for this ancestor being the genus Eusyon. These were relatively small jackal-like canids with slender builds and generalised omnivorous diets, weighing about 15 kilograms or 33 pounds on average. The genus originated in the western United States, with the oldest known species being Eusyon davisi, which first appeared roughly 6 million years ago. Animals like this probably gave rise to the pseudocyanins as canids entered South America during the late Pliocene. Meanwhile, Eusyon populations that remained in North America continued to diversify, producing species like E. ferox, which has often been argued to represent the common ancestor of all modern wolf-like canids, sometimes even being placed in the genus Canis itself. It lived during the early Pliocene, between 4.9 and 4.8 million years ago, with recent analysis of its teeth revealing that E. ferox was larger than other Eusyon species, while also having a more hypercarnivorous diet. By around 7 million years ago, members of this genus migrated across the Bering Land Bridge and very quickly colonised Eurasia and Africa, producing a large but uncertain number of species there. However, in their ancestral homeland of North America, Eusyon gave rise to an endemic lineage that diverged roughly 5.7 million years ago, which would eventually produce the formidable Anosyon dirus during the Pleistocene. As I've already done a full video on this animal, I won't go into too much detail here, but to summarise, the so-called direwolf of the late Pleistocene of North America was once thought to be a close relative of the living grey wolf Canis lupus, based purely on morphological grounds. However, DNA analysis has revealed that the direwolf was only distantly related to C. lupus, and was in fact part of an early diverging lineage within Canina. Therefore, the animal was given a new genus name to reflect this, being dubbed Anosyon. Exactly what this powerful canine evolved from is still a bit of a mystery, although it has been suggested that the earlier Pleistocene American Canis armbrewsteri and the Plio-Pleistocene Canis edwardii may have been part of this direwolf lineage. Anosyon showed no evidence of hybridization with members of the genus Canis, including the coyotes or grey wolves that still live in North America, indicating that the ancestors of these canines developed in Eurasia and migrated across the Bering Land Bridge more recently during the late Pleistocene. This makes Anosyon the most basal known member of Canina, with all other modern forms probably having evolved in Africa and Eurasia from within the Eusyon species complex. The recently identified E. khoikhoi from early Pliocene South Africa is a good example of this. Dating to circa 5 million years ago, it's been found to be a close relative of the modern side-striped jackal, a slender, medium-sized canid native to woodland and savanna-dominated regions across sub-Saharan Africa. This matches recent phylogenetic studies of Canina very well, which suggest that the living African jackal lineage diverged from other canids about 5 million years ago. There are two species of these, often grouped together into the genus Lupalela, although the aforementioned side-striped jackal is sometimes placed in its own genus Schafia. This species measures over 3 feet long, weighs between 6 to 14 kilograms or 14 to 31 pounds, and possesses a shortish greyish-brown coat, with an indistinct white stripe running along the sides of the body. An adaptable generalist with a huge range and broad unfussy diet, this animal has smaller carnassial teeth than the contemporary black-backed jackal, being well suited to an omnivorous diet. In the wild, it feeds largely on invertebrates during the wet season, and small mammals such as rabbits and spring hares in the dry months. A largely solitary canid, it frequently scavenges the kills of larger predators, while also consuming fruit when available. Meanwhile, the black-backed jackal, Luperlela mesomelas, looks fairly similar but is almost fox-like in appearance, possessing a sandy-coloured head, belly and legs, in addition to a silvery blackish patch of fur running along the back. It is a more carnivorous animal than the side-striped jackal, with a more robustly built skull and larger carnassials for slicing through flesh, taking a variety of small prey, from invertebrates to rodents, hares, antelope such as the impala, and even seal pups in more coastal areas. L. mesomelas lives in monogamous pairs within a defined territory, preferring open grassland and savanna, with there being two distinct subspecies native to southern and eastern Africa respectively, at the same time in which Eusyon koi was present in South Africa circa 5 million years ago. Potentially the oldest species of the genus Canis was developing in North America. This was Canis lepophagus, a superficially coyote-like animal that was once thought to be a close relative of the living coyote C. latrans. However, C. lepophagus possessed more basal features of the skeleton, indicating that it was an early member of Canis with no close modern relatives. It lived across the western United States during the Pliocene, with those found at the Hagerman site in Idaho dwelling alongside another modestly sized but currently unnamed species of Canis. Genetic testing of living members of Canina have revealed that the Canis species diverged from their closest relatives, the African painted dog and the dhole, between 4.8 and 3.5 million years ago. The former, under the scientific name Lycaon pictus, is a highly distinctive canid native to a wide but patchy range across arid and semi-arid grassland regions of sub-Saharan Africa, the largest wild canine present on the continent. African painted dogs are quite beautiful, elegant animals, with rangy builds, large ears, the loss of the first digits on the front feet, shortened robust jaws, and smooth light brown fur dappled with black and white markings. These highly gregarious canines live in packs of up to 27 adults and their pups, with their coat patterns probably serving identification purposes, like a human fingerprint. Males and females have separate dominance hierarchies, with the dominant pair largely being the only members to breed. Strangely for a carnivoran, the males stay within their natal group, while the females leave and join other packs. Unlike the grey wolf, another social hypercarnivorous canid, African painted dogs do not utilise a wide range of facial expressions and body language, instead having a wide array of vocalisations that fill similar purposes, such as yelps, barks and sneezing sounds, the latter of which seems to indicate decision-making before going on a hunt. The species is a specialised hunter of medium-sized antelopes, being a diurnal long-distance runner capable of chasing prey at speeds of up to 41 miles per hour or 66 kilometers an hour over distances of 2 kilometers. Due to their coordinated behaviour, over 60% of their hunts are successful, with the pups getting first dibs. Lycaon pictus first appears in the fossil record during the Middle Pleistocene circa 200,000 years ago, with the fossil species L. sequoia of southern Africa living between 2 and 1 million years ago during the early Pleistocene. Lycaon is probably closely related to the genus Xenocyon, a widespread, gregarious and large hypercarnivorous canid present across Eurasia, Africa and briefly North America during the Pliocene and Pleistocene. Originating in China circa 3.8 to 3.4 million years ago, Xenocyon was the first member of Canidae to shift towards a larger body size and to show adaptations for hunting prey in packs over long distances. Despite its status as the first truly apex canine, much about Xenocyon remains enigmatic, least of all because of its taxonomic status. Indeed, the taxonomy of Xenocyon has been a long-standing issue, being debated even within the last few years. Historically, it's been considered by some authors to be a subgenus of the genus Canis, while for others they were considered to be synonymous with the genus Lycaon. Recently, however, new evidence has been put forth to suggest that Xenocyon, rather than being a subset of Canis or Lycaon, is in fact its own genus. With similar adaptations to long-distance running and hypercarnivory, Zinner species probably somewhat resembled larger wolf-sized versions of the African painted dog, and were very successful, ranging from southern Africa as far north as Poland and as far west as Spain and Italy, reaching as far east as China and Japan. One species was even present in North America, although its remains are quite rare. Zinner vanished during the Middle Pleistocene, possibly due to the effects of a cooling climate and competition with newly arrived Panthera fossilis and the large hyena Crocutus spelaea. It may have given rise to Lycaon as well as the Dhole, a very underrated animal that is very poorly known in Western countries. Scientifically known as Kuon alpinus, the Dhole is a modestly sized canid with a broadly Asian distribution, being native to the Indian subcontinent, China and Southeast Asia. Weighing about 15 kilograms or 33 pounds on average, this distinctive-looking animal possesses reddish-brown fur, an elongated torso, slender legs, and a powerfully built, short-snouted skull. Preferring forested conditions, dholes are highly social, living in loosely associated clans of up to 40 individuals, and lack a strict dominance hierarchy, similar to African painted dogs. They are far less territorial than grey wolves, with pups able to move between clans relatively easily. This species also possesses a complex range of vocalizations and facial expressions, which are put to good use while hunting. While in dense brush, dholes will produce high-pitched whistling sounds to locate each other before the chase begins. A diverse selection of prey species are targeted, including deer, wild boar, buffaloes and tapirs, which are chased and mobbed by the clan, with one individual grabbing the unfortunate prey animal by the nose, while the rest rip and tear open the flanks. Dholes have a fearsome reputation, with large clans driving leopards and even tigers up into trees, although the big cats will actively hunt and kill dholes if the dogs are alone or in small groups. During the Pleistocene, dholes had a much wider range than they do today, being found across most of Eurasia. A European species, Kuon alpinus europaeus, was found across this region, being very similar to the modern Asian forms but was larger, almost comparable to a grey wolf in size. Between 650 and 450,000 years ago in Europe, open grasslands dominated by Xenoscion lycaonoides, while the European dhole preferred forests, highlands and mountains. During the period of the Würm glaciation circa 14,000 years ago, the species vanished from much of Europe, but may have persisted in the Iberian Peninsula until the early Holocene. Recent genetic studies carried out on the extinct genus Cynotherium, a small red fox-sized canid endemic to Sardinia and adapted for stalking small mammals and birds, have found that it was a close relative of the modern dhole, with the two having diverged about 900,000 years ago. This dhole group was found to have emerged by around 2.5 million years ago, or perhaps earlier, as a result of a hybridization event between the lineage closely related to the genus Canis and the lineage related to the African wild dog, in proportions of roughly 65% and 35% respectively. Cynotherium died out during the early Holocene, and probably encountered the first humans to live on Sardinia. Members of the genus Canis in a strict sense begin to appear in the fossil record by around 3 million years ago in Eurasia, with some scrappy and indeterminate material having been unearthed in China and possibly France, although the oldest well-known true members of Canis seem to be C. etruscus and C. arnensis. Canis etruscus was native to the Mediterranean and the Crimean Peninsula between 1.9 and 1.6 million years ago, being about the size of a small modern grey wolf. Historically, it was thought to be the direct ancestor of Canis lupus, although this is now generally not considered accurate. It lived alongside the generally smaller and more jackal-like Canis arnensis, but the separation of the two species into wolf-like and jackal-like morphs is an oversimplification. The sudden appearance of these animals in Europe is reflective of a rapid diversification within the genus Canis that took place circa 1.8 million years ago, which coincided with a decrease in precipitation and an increase in annual seasonality, which followed the 41,000-year amplification shift of Milankovitch cycles. This led to the formation of more open, drier landscapes, which the Canis species were well suited to. The most basal living species is the Ethiopian wolf, Canis simensis, an endangered and highly specialised canine native to the highlands of Ethiopia. Represented by a population of just 500 or so individuals, C. simensis is a coyote-sized animal with a reddish-brown coat and highly elongated jaws, which are well adapted for hunting small burrowing alpine mole rats and other rodents. The oldest fossils of this species date to between 1.6 and 1.4 million years ago, already in Ethiopia, with it being proposed that the ancestors of C. simensis originated in Eurasia over 2 million years ago and migrated southwards into Africa as part of the aforementioned Canis diversification event of the early Pleistocene. This also produced the slightly more derived Eurasian golden jackal Canis aureus, which first diverged roughly 1.9 million years ago, and may be a close relative of the extinct European C. etruscus or C. arnensis. Generally resembling a small grey wolf or coyote, the golden jackal can be distinguished from these by its smaller size, lighter weight, shorter legs, and more pointed muzzle. Possessing a huge range that stretches from southeastern Europe to Thailand, C. aureus is a very adaptable canine, feeding on a variety of small mammals, reptiles, carrion, and fruit, while living in mated pairs as adults. Meanwhile, the more derived African wolf, coyote, and grey wolf are considered to be defining Canis species. Once thought to have evolved from the aforementioned Canis etruscus, more recent finds from the famous Dmanisi fossil locality in Georgia have uncovered a new species, Canis bourjgali, dated to between 1.8 and 1.75 million years ago. This animal lived at the right time and possessed the right features to be considered a potential ancestor of the African wolf, coyote, and grey wolf. The African wolf, Canis lupasta, is the most basal of the three, potentially splitting off 1.7 million years ago, and contains genetic traces from the Ethiopian wolf and Middle Eastern populations of the grey wolf. Slightly smaller than the coyote, C. lupasta can be found across much of northern and eastern Africa, thriving in hot, open desert and grassland ecosystems. Another dietary generalist, this diurnal animal feeds on a variety of small vertebrates and also consumes a large amount of insects. Northern populations tend to be larger and more robust, compared to the smaller and jackal-like forms found in East Africa. While C. lupasta was developing in Africa, the small Canis mossbackensis was present in Europe and East Asia between 1.4 million and 400,000 years ago, possibly giving rise to the coyote grey wolf line circa 1.1 million years ago. Genetic testing carried out on the direwolf Anoscion has shown that coyotes and grey wolves had their origins in Eurasia before migrating to North America during the second half of the Pleistocene. The relationships and taxonomy of North American Canis species are still quite controversial. The coyote, Canis latrans, is endemic to the continent and somewhat resembles a smaller version of the grey wolf, albeit possessing larger ears and a thinner, more gracile build. It fills a similar ecological role to the Eurasian golden jackal, being an adaptable animal with a generalist diet, although about 90% of its caloric intake comes from meat. Not as social as grey wolves, and targeting notably smaller prey, coyotes live in family groups centered on a breeding female, although bigger groups will form to take down ungulates. Rodents and birds are often pounced on with a quick leap. Before European colonization of the Americas, these canines were mostly native to what is now western and southwestern United States, with their range limited due to competition with wolves. However, with the extirpation of wolves from much of the United States, coyotes have greatly expanded outwards, spanning from Alaska to Guatemala. In addition, there are potentially two other endemic North American Canis species, with these being the red wolf and the eastern wolf. While some authorities consider these animals to be hybrids of coyotes and grey wolves, others have found them to be their own unique species, being close relatives of coyotes. The red wolf, potentially Canis rufus, was native to much of the southeastern United States during the Holocene, ranging from Texas to Pennsylvania. However, modern populations are now restricted to a single wildlife preserve in North Carolina, with the combined number of individuals here, in addition to those in zoos, adding up to less than 300 individuals. This drastic decline was due to habitat destruction and persecution. Red wolves are intermediate in size between coyotes and Canis lupus, possessing large ears, pointed snouts, elongated legs, and a distinctive tawny reddish-grey coat, making them look quite beautiful in my opinion. Interestingly, a recent 2021 study has suggested that Canis rufus was once found across North America during the Pleistocene, being the same animal as the so-called Pleistocene coyote. It may have been displaced following the arrival of modern grey wolves between 80,000 and 60,000 years ago, while the modern Holocene coyote replaced the red wolf in the mid-continent between 60,000 and 30,000 years ago. The coyote expanded into California at the beginning of the Holocene and admixed with the red wolf, phenotypically replacing them. The study proposes that the red wolf may predate the coyote in North America, being an earlier relative also descended from Canis mossbackensis. In similar taxonomic limbo is the eastern wolf, potentially the species Canis lycaon. Native to the Great Lakes region and southeastern Canada, the eastern wolf is similar in size to Canis rufus, and may be closely related to it if the two are interpreted as genuine species. They hunt mainly small to medium-sized prey in temperate and boreal forested ecosystems, being classified as threatened in the wild. Meanwhile, the most widespread modern Canis species is the grey wolf, Canis lupus, potentially sharing a common Eurasian ancestor with the coyote about 1 million years ago. The oldest unquestioned remains of this dynamic animal have recently been uncovered from Ponte Galeria in Italy and date to roughly 406,000 years ago during the Middle Pleistocene. Remains from Cripple Creek Sump in Alaska may be considerably older, around 1 million years ago, though differentiating between the remains of modern wolves and C. mossbackensis is difficult and ambiguous at this time in the fossil record. It may be plausible that the grey wolf developed from a robust morph of mossbackensis, while the coyote, and potentially the red wolf and eastern wolf, developed from a different population, with an enormous earlier Holocene range spanning from the Iberian Peninsula to central Mexico. Canis lupus is the largest and most massive modern canine, although the many different subspecies can vary greatly in size and appearance. The largest forms include the Yukon wolf, with males averaging about 56 kilograms or 111 pounds and possessing dense fur and robust builds, while the smaller subspecies, such as the Indian wolf and Arabian wolf, are notably lighter and possess a lean, rangy build with much shorter fur. Of all members of the genus Canis, this species is most specialised for cooperative big game hunting, as demonstrated by its physical adaptations to tackling large prey, its more social nature, and its highly advanced expressions, including individual or group howling. It travels in nuclear families, consisting of a mated pair accompanied by their offspring. Offspring may leave to form their own packs at the onset of sexual maturity and in response to competition for food within the family. Some Pleistocene species, such as the basal Beringian wolf, were similar to the Yukon wolf in size but were more heavily built, with teeth and jaws better adapted for crushing bone and feeding on abundant megafaunal prey. All living members of Canis lupus share a common ancestor that is thought to have lived about 250,000 years ago, which, based on genetic testing, probably lived in Asia, with the Himalayan and Indian wolf subspecies being the most basal. The common ancestors of most Eurasian and North American subspecies diverged from each other far more recently, about 25,000 years ago during the last glacial period. With a very long history of interaction with humans, grey wolves have played a variety of roles within cultures that live alongside them, from respected spirit guides to frightening monsters. Of course, the modern domestic dog is also descended from late Pleistocene members of Canis lupus, with the oldest fossil evidence indicating that this domestication event had already occurred by around 14,200 years ago, although that is a topic best left for an entire video in its own right. To conclude, the development of the wolf-like canids went hand in hand with the expansion of more open, drier grassland ecosystems during the Pliocene and early Pleistocene. Adaptations for hunting cooperatively and targeting larger ungulate prey led to an increase in body size in some species, while others remained small and generalised. Their sociality would eventually lead one species to enter into a partnership with another animal, a bipedal social ape, while the expansion of the same ape would later cause the endangerment of many wild canines. Thanks for watching, everyone. The next episode will be covering the recently described bizarre Triassic reptile Mirasaura and its relationship with the mysterious Longisquama. I've also got big plans for the 50k subscriber special, so watch this space. See you again soon. Cheerio.